Welcome to the SmartKeys podcast. Today, we are opening up a file that sits right at the intersection of your HR department, your IT department, and frankly, the future of your entire organizational strategy. We are talking about algorithmic management. And before you tune out thinking this is just some niche tech jargon, I want to frame this properly. If you manage a team, or if you're managed by anyone, this is defining the rules of engagement in the modern workplace.
It really is. It sounds like something from a sci-fi novel.
Yeah.
The idea of a robot middle manager. But it's actually the definition of modern operational efficiency. We're doing a deep dive into a fascinating, really comprehensive guide by Felix Römer titled Algorithmic Management: Balancing Efficiency and Ethics at Work. And the core mission of this discussion as well is to provide a strategic map for professionals. We want to help you understand how software is moving from just tracking work to actually directing it.
Exactly. This isn't just about spreadsheets anymore. We're looking at a fundamental shift in power dynamics and decision-making within the workplace. We're going to walk you through the mechanics of how these systems think, the very real risks of what's called digital Taylorism, and maybe most importantly, the regulatory storm that is brewing on the horizon. If you want to stay ahead of the curve, you really need to understand this.
And we aren't just talking about Uber drivers here, right? That's the common misconception.
Right, and that's a crucial distinction. The source material acknowledges that, yes, the gig economy was the testing ground. But the headline today is that these tools have migrated indoors. They are in the corporate office. But let's start with the definition. When Römer talks about algorithmic management, what is the actual scope?
At its simplest level, it is the strategic use of data-driven tools to handle tasks that used to be done by human managers. I mean, traditionally, a human manager decides who does what, when they do it, and evaluates how well they did it. Algorithmic management takes those three pillars, allocation, direction, and evaluation, and hands them over to a software system.
So it's automating the boss function.
In many ways, yes. The source material points back to research from 2015 by Lee and colleagues on Uber and Lyft.
Mm-hmm.
That was really the Wild West origin story. You had an app collecting massive amounts of data, GPS location, traffic speed, customer demand spikes, and a decision engine effectively acting as the dispatcher. There was no human saying, hey, go pick up John at the airport. The algorithm did it.
Based on an optimization model. And the reason that model took over the world is simple: scale. A human dispatcher can handle, maybe dozens of cars. An algorithm can handle thousands simultaneously.
Exactly. And that scalability is why this has jumped the fence into traditional firms. We're seeing these tactics applied to salaried employees, and the tech has gotten much more sophisticated than just GPS tracking. We're talking about CV analysis using natural language processing, automated scheduling systems in hospitals, performance monitoring in law firms.
The source brought up a specific example that I think every business leader needs to hear because it quantifies the ROI so clearly. L'Oreal.
Right, the cosmetics giant. That case study is fascinating.
They implemented an AI solution to handle their recruitment process. And the numbers are they're staggering. They managed to speed up their hiring process by tenfold.
Tenfold. I mean, that is a game-changing efficiency gain. And they did it by implementing a solution based on computational linguistics.
Let's pause on that term, computational linguistics, because it sounds heavy. But essentially, we are talking about software that doesn't just look for keywords like Excel or management in a resume. It's actually parsing the language to infer meaning and context, right?
Precisely. It's moving from syntax, the grammar, to semantics, the meaning. The software can read a cover letter and understand the concept of leadership or creativity within the text. And the result for L'Oreal wasn't just speed. They were able to screen 25% more applicants than they could have with human recruiters.
That is massive. If you're a CEO, that looks like the holy grail. You get to see more candidates, hire the best ones faster, and spend less money doing it. That is the efficiency utopia. But, and this is why we're having this deep dive, you can't just plug this stuff in and walk away. The source material outlines a pipeline of how these systems actually function. And I think we need to break that down, because if you don't understand the engineering, you can't manage the risk.
It is entirely engineering. And Römer breaks it down into three distinct stages. If you want to implement this successfully, you have to understand this flow. Stage 1 is data collection,
which, in the office context, is essentially surveillance.
In a neutral technical sense, yes. It is data capture. You cannot manage what you cannot measure. In a warehouse, this might be handheld scanners tracking items moved per hour. In a gig app, it's the phone sensors. But in an office, it's activity logs, email metadata, or even keystroke dynamics.
Keystroke dynamics? That feels incredibly granular.
It is. It tracks how fast you type, the rhythm of your work, the length of pauses between tasks. It creates a digital fingerprint of your productivity.
Okay, so the system watches you. That's step one. That data then feeds into stage two, the decision engine.
This is the brain, or often the black box.
Right.
The algorithm takes that raw data, say employee A paused for 5 minutes, and compares it against a model of what optimal performance looks like. Then it calculates a response, it routes work, or it flags an anomaly.
Which leads to stage three, the nudge. And I find this part psychologically fascinating.
The nudge is where the rubber meets the road. The system doesn't necessarily send you an email saying, work harder. It might just show you a leaderboard where you've dropped 2 spots. Or it sends a notification saying, you're in the top 10% for speed today, keep it up.
That's gamification.
It is. But it's gamification with your paycheck or your career trajectory attached to it. It's designed to shape behavior and extract maximum effort without a human manager ever having to step in.
So you have this loop: watch, decide, nudge. And that brings us to the core tension of the article: balancing efficiency and ethics. Because while L'Oreal is celebrating their hiring speed, there are significant risks to running a business this way. The source uses a phrase that I want to unpack: digital Taylorism.
Yeah, there's a callback to Frederick Taylor, the father of scientific management in the early 20th century. He was the guy standing in factories with a stopwatch, timing how long it took a worker to hammer a nail, trying to shave off seconds to boost output.
Treating humans like machines, basically.
Exactly. And digital Taylorism is that methodology on steroids. The source argues that because sensors are so cheap and software is so scalable, we can now time everything. The text notes that the pandemic really accelerated this. When everyone went remote, managers panicked, they lost line of sight. So they installed monitoring software to regain that sense of control.
But there is a massive strategic flaw in treating humans purely as data points. The text had a specific example about housekeepers in the hospitality industry that I think perfectly illustrates why this can backfire.
That example is critical for understanding the black box problem. So you had an algorithm assigning rooms to housekeepers. The goal was purely mathematical. Minimize travel time between rooms to maximize the number of rooms cleaned per shift. On a spreadsheet, it looked like perfect efficiency.
But reality isn't a spreadsheet.
No. The algorithm didn't account for the condition of the room. It treated room 204 as identical to room 205. But maybe 204 was a checkout where a party happened. Trashed, heavy lifting, deep scrubbing needed, while 205 was just a light dusting. The system assigned workers back-to-back heavy rooms because they were close together geographically.
Resulting in increased physical strain and an injury risk.
Right, because the software lacked context. It saw the location, but it didn't understand the workload. And because the worker couldn't argue with the algorithm, it's just an app telling you where to go, they pushed through until they got hurt. From a business perspective, that's not efficiency. That's a liability.
That's the lack of contestability, which is a concept we will get to in a minute. But I want to play devil's advocate for a second. The source doesn't just say algorithms are bad. It actually points out some counterintuitive benefits for the workers themselves.
It does, and it's important to see the full picture. There is the potential for personalization and autonomy. Take Deliveroo, for instance. The app gives riders metrics on their travel time and routes. Now, you could view that as pressure, but the source argues that for some workers, this is actually empowering. It's instant feedback.
Unlike waiting for a quarterly review.
Exactly. In a traditional job, you might wait 3 months to find out your boss thinks you're slow. By then, it's too late to fix it. With the app, you can self-correct in real time. You can optimize your own earnings. There is no bias, no boss playing favorites. The data is the data.
So it cuts both ways. It removes human bias, but it also removes human empathy.
That is the trade-off.
Yeah.
And that's why the strategy you choose is so important.
So let's get into that strategy. If I'm listening to this and I manage a team, what do I do? Do I refuse to use these tools and get left behind by competitors like L'Oreal? Or do I plug everyone into the matrix?
The source offers a third way, and this is really the strategic map for the episode. It's called augmentation.
Augmentation versus automation. Break that down.
The goal shouldn't be to replace the manager. It should be to upgrade the manager. The text suggests a decision framework. Look at your tasks. Are they high volume, repeatable, and low context?
Like screening 10,000 resumes or scheduling shifts for 500 nurses?
Exactly. Automate that. Let the machine do the grunt work. But, and this is the golden rule, is the decision high stakes, high context, or culturally sensitive?
Like deciding who to actually hire after the screening or handling a disciplinary issue.
Or determining why a project is late. Those require a human in the loop. You use the AI to surface the data, but the human makes the call.
But here is the catch the source mentions. To do that effectively, managers need a totally new skill set. You can't just go by gut feeling anymore.
You need data literacy. And I don't mean you need to know how to code in Python. I mean, you need the ability to look at the output of a model and spot anomalies. You need to be able to say, wait, why is the algorithm rejecting every candidate from this specific zip code?
That requires what the source calls ethical reasoning.
Yes. It's the ability to ask, is this fair? Or is this accurate? Even when the computer says, this is efficient. Because the algorithm is always going to prioritize the metric it was optimized for, usually speed or cost. It doesn't know what fairness or long-term retention looks like unless a human imposes that constraint.
There was also a practical tip about latency that I thought was really smart. It's a bit technical, but it makes a lot of sense.
Oh, the speed of the nudge, yes.
Yeah.
This is about user experience designed for your employees.
Right. Just because you can nudge someone instantly doesn't mean you should.
Exactly. Engineering-wise, we can make these systems alert you the second you make a mistake. Boom, alert on your screen. But the source argues that good management involves tuning that latency. Sometimes immediate feedback is just, it's annoying. It feels like micromanagement. A smart manager or a smart system design might delay that feedback to the end of the day or the end of the week. It preserves the user experience and reduces stress.
It treats the worker like an adult professional, not a machine component. Now, we have to pivot to the part of the deep dive that gives this topic real teeth. Because if you think you can just install some monitoring software and figure the details out later, the legal system has some bad news for you. The Wild West days of 2015 are over.
They certainly are. The regulatory landscape is closing in fast, and compliance is becoming a major factor in how you build these systems.
The source lists some specific legislation. Let's look at the Stop Spying Bosses Act.
Subtle name, right. But it's a serious proposal. It would prohibit the collection of sensitive data without disclosure. It would essentially force companies to say, we are tracking X, Y, and Z, and here is why. But more importantly, it proposes creating a specific privacy and technology division at the Department of Labor.
That signals that the government views workplace surveillance as a fundamental labor rights issue, not just a tech issue.
Correct. And looking at the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, their general counsel has already issued memos warning that broad monitoring can violate Section 7 of the NLRA.
Section 7 is the right to organize, correct?
Yes. If your surveillance is so intense that employees are afraid to talk to each other about their wages or about forming a union because they think the algorithm is listening, you are breaking federal law. That is a massive liability trap.
And it's not just federal. We're seeing states go rogue on this.
Illinois has a law specifically limiting how AI can analyze video interviews. New York City requires bias audits for automated employment decision tools. If you use AI to hire in NYC, you have to prove it's not discriminating against protected groups.
But the big one, the one that usually sets the global standard, is coming from Europe, the Platform Work Directive.
This is the game changer. The EU is pushing for a concept called contestability.
I love that word, contestability.
It sounds legalistic, but it's actually very human. It means you have the right to challenge the robot. If an algorithm fires you, or docks your pay, or assigns you a shift you can't work, you have the legal right to say, I want a human to review this decision.
That seems like it solves the black box problem we talked about earlier.
It forces the box open. Because to contest a decision, the company has to explain how the decision was made. That links back to explainability. If you can't explain to a judge or a worker why the algorithm made a choice, you shouldn't be using that algorithm.
So even if our listener is in Texas or Ohio, not Brussels, why should they care about an EU directive?
Because multinational companies tend to standardize their tech stacks. If L'Oreal or Uber has to build a contestable system for Europe, they're likely going to roll that out globally because it's cheaper than maintaining two separate systems. This standard is likely coming to a desk near you.
Okay, so we've covered the mechanics, the risks, and the laws. Let's get to the how-tos. The source provides a guide for implementation. If I'm a manager and I want to bring in these tools without causing a revolt or getting sued, where do I start?
Step 1, start small. Do not try to automate your entire workforce overnight. Pick a process that is low risk.
Like scheduling shifts.
Perfect example. It has clear inputs, people's availability, and clear outputs, the roster. Automate that. See if it works. See if people hate it. Prove the value before you scale it to performance reviews or hiring.
Step 2 is communication. And honestly, this seems to be where most companies fail.
It's the secret police problem. If you install monitoring software in secret, and employees find out, and they always find out, you have destroyed trust forever. You have to control the narrative.
So what's the script?
You say, we are introducing this tool to help balance workloads so no one burns out. Or, we are using this to ensure fair shift distribution. You have to frame it as a benefit to the team, not just a control mechanism for the boss.
It changes the vibe from "I don't trust you" to "I'm trying to help you."
Exactly. But you have to mean it. Which leads to step 3, governance. You must have human-in-the-loop protocols.
This goes back to the augmentation idea.
Yes, never let a high-stakes decision happen purely by algorithm. If the system flags an employee for poor performance, that should trigger a conversation, not an automatic warning letter.
And finally, feedback channels.
This is the practical application of contestability. You have to give workers a button to press that says, this data is wrong, or this decision doesn't make sense.
The source talks about shifting power dynamics here. It touches on something called information asymmetry.
Right. If only the boss sees the data, the worker is oppressed. But if the worker has access to their own dashboard, if they can see exactly what metrics they are being judged on, they are empowered. They can use that data to improve.
That is a really powerful distinction. It's the same technology, but who holds the keys changes everything.
That is the crux of it. The future of work isn't about humans versus AI. It's about integrating them. The source mentions that we might soon see transparency reports becoming standard.
Like an annual financial report, but for algorithms.
Exactly. Here is how our algorithms impacted our workforce this year. It sounds futuristic, but given the trajectory of regulations like the NYC bias audits, it's actually quite probable that shareholders will start demanding this info.
Imagine having to publish your algorithm impact statement to your shareholders. It would certainly make companies think twice about which settings they tweak.
It absolutely would.
So, bringing this all home for the listener, we've covered a lot of ground today. What is the one thing they need to walk away with?
If I had to boil the source material down to one sentence, it's this. Trust is a strategic advantage.
Elaborate on that.
We often look at things like transparency and human in the loop as compliance costs things that slow us down. But in an age of algorithmic management, trust is retention. If your employees believe the system is rigged, if it's a black box that spits out random orders, they will disengage. They will quiet quit.
Or they'll just leave to a competitor who treats them better.
Right. But if they trust the system, if they know the rules of the game, and they have the power to challenge the referee, they will use those tools to perform better.
So you're saying the technology works better when the culture is healthy?
100%. The best algorithm in the world cannot fix a toxic culture. In fact, it will usually amplify it.
And a final practical thought from the text was to treat this as a living program.
Don't set it and forget it. The model that is fair today might be biased tomorrow because the market changed or your workforce demographics changed. You have to keep testing it. You have to keep listening to the people who are subject to it.
It's the difference between using a tool and wielding a weapon.
That's a perfect analogy.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive. It's clear that algorithmic management is here to stay. The efficiency gains, like that L'Oreal example, are just too big to ignore. But the strategic implementation is where the winners will be separated from the losers.
Absolutely. The winners in this new economy will be the ones who figure out how to get the speed of the machine without losing the soul of the human.
I think that is a perfect place to leave it. A huge thank you to everyone for tuning into the SmartKeys podcast today.
Thank you.
If you want to dig deeper into the diagrams, the full policy breakdown, and really see the nuts and bolts of how this works, I highly encourage you to read the full article by Felix Römer. It is a goldmine of information for modern professionals. We have put the link directly in the show notes for you.
It's definitely worth a read.
And as always, if you enjoyed this deep dive, please make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Until next time, keep optimizing.